Hello there. It's time for another episode of Orange Truth Archetypes. And on this episode, we'll be continuing to look at the TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender. And on this episode, we'll be looking at Sokka of the Southern Water Tribe. I'll analyze his character traits and personality and base entirely on my more or less completely unqualified opinion, assigning him his specific archetype. Let's get started. First on the list is the Ruler archetype. Now, I'm not really sure if Sokka is a ruler or not. I mean, he clearly is the one who needs to be in charge of everything. Even though he can't bend, he contributes to Team Avatar by coming up with schedules, plans, and creative tactics. And while he does like being in charge, there are moments where he feels inferior due to his lack of bending ability. There are also many times where he acts proud and confident, but also humble. He also only agrees with things if they go his way. This is why he often refers to bending as magic, because it is something he doesn't understand. He thinks things should be a certain way, of course. His way, though. And he gets very annoyed when too much craziness or spontaneity happens. But with Sokka's excellent leadership skills, I think this is a good contender for his archetype. Next on the list is the Jester. Now, this archetype might actually be a surprisingly good fit. While yes, he does like having a plan, he is pretty good at making things up as he goes along. He has a creative side for certain, but it's just more function-based, and unfortunately, not very imaginative. So while he does prefer to stick to a strict plan of action, he is able to adjust it if it means getting the job done. The Jester is often a male and a comedian, and Sokka is known for being the funny guy. However, he's much more pessimistic than the Jester normally is, and doesn't always see things from other people's point of view. Plus, he is much more concerned with getting to the destination than he is valuing the journey. So overall, this archetype might surprise you. Moving on down the list is the Everyman archetype. Like the Everyman, Sokka is definitely hard-working. He is willing to put forth a lot of time and effort in anything that he does. And while he does like the little things, he also values more grandiose ideas. And he enjoys working with people of similar mindset. Throughout the series, we really see Sokka form a strong connection with people, particularly non-benders that are like him. He's also very quick to jump to conclusions and pick sides. However, while the Everyman prefers to blame others for the problems, Sokka accepts that sometimes he does stumble and fall, and make mistakes on his own. In the episode with the Great Divide, instead of associating with a tribe that is all about following the rules, he instead associated with a tribe that were a little more flexible. I think if Sokka had gone with the other tribe though, he would have done just as well there. I really believe that this goes to show how Sokka is excellent at gaining acceptance in a group and adapting to their ways, whatever they may be. Thus, I think this archetype is a strong contender for Sokka's personality. And now we have the Caregiver archetype. Now, there have been a lot of fan theories out there on whether or not Sokka actually has any children. However, even in the Legend of Korra series, we don't really see him as much of an adult. But aside from that, I don't really see Sokka as much of a caregiver per se. Yes, he does care a lot about his friends and family, and is always willing to protect them. Plus, he often fits the role of the dad of the group, making dad jokes, making sure everyone is on time, and even provides food for them. Heck, he even tried to be Aang's dad at one point. And he always has to fix things if they fall within the bounds of the group. He's also willing to play dirty and cheat if it means bettering the group. However, I don't think he sees himself as anyone's parent. Yes, he might be the oldest, but he acknowledges that he doesn't always know what is best for the group. He knows that Aang is the wisest, Toph is the toughest, and even admits that he views Katara as the mom of the group. So while it is a surprisingly good fit, let's keep looking. Next up is the Hero archetype. Now I think this is definitely the archetype that Sokka wants to be. He grew up during wartime and wanted nothing more than to go off to battle like the rest of the men in his tribe. but unfortunately, he didn't meet the age requirement at the time. Thus, he has this patriotic desire to serve, like his dad, which in turn makes him pretty quick to jump into battle. However, the hero is optimistic and happy, and Sokka can get pretty aggravated at times. Plus, while he does have a desire to beat the enemy, he doesn't have the desire to help those in need. And while he does have a need to overcome obstacles, he doesn't always do so in a straightforward motion. Yes, he is able to think quickly and act on his feet, but he's not above thinking of a more creative way to solve problems. So while I do think he would make a great leader, warrior, and thinker, maybe a hero isn't the best fit for him, but we'll see. Speaking of leader, we move on to the next archetype, the revolutionary. I think this might be a pretty good fit for Sokka. He definitely has the desire to change the world around him and enjoys making rules for people to follow. And while the story might revolve around Aang, if I had to pick a leader of the group, I would pick Sokka. He definitely has the desire to be respected by others and a belief that he knows the best way to go about doing things. He's also naturally pessimistic and not very trusting. What is interesting though is that while he definitely is a big picture individual, he's also not above obsessing over the other details. Plus, the revolutionary is afraid of being lost in the mainstream, and I don't think Sokka is much of a hipster. He doesn't really support individual thinking, and believes that some things are best left as they are.
I'm just a simple guy with simple needs.
So to be honest, I definitely think this archetype has potential. And now for the troublesome archetype, the Outlaw. Now, let's see if this one fits Sokka a little better. Sokka and the gang have certainly gotten into trouble throughout their journeys. And while normally a rule follower, he does indulge in troublesome streaks every now and then. He also believes that he's a master of his fate and is in charge of his own destiny, while also acknowledging the usefulness of violence. On the other hand, he's usually only willing to break the rules if he himself disagrees with them. And while he does have a creative side, such as poetry, his behavior doesn't really strike me as rebellious. After all, the person he idolizes most is his father, and I think he strives to be as much like him as he can. Thus, I don't think he's much of an outlaw. Next on the list is the Magician. I think this may be a really good fit for Sokka. In terms of being master of the elements, Sokka is known for being not just smart, but a skilled warrior. However, he didn't really start out that way. He went from getting his butt kicked pretty easily to being a skilled swordsman. Plus, he studied many different fighting techniques as he traveled throughout the world. I think Sokka really transforms from being a goofy punchline to a respectable character. Plus, while he also develops his physical skills, he also develops mentally. While I wouldn't necessarily put him on the academic level of the Mechanist or the Professor from Ba Sing Se, he does show a lot of potential. He has shown a number of innovative ideas and is useful when it comes to quick thinking situations. So because he shows a lot of character growth in the series, and it kind of fits it pretty well, I think this archetype is going to be pretty tough to beat. And now we have the Sage archetype. While not the wise man yet, I think Sokka is well on his way to becoming one. For starters, while he does admit that he has a lot to learn, he puts off this persona that he's already pretty awesome, and he does try to offer a lot of guidance in the group.
Why are you all looking at me?
You're the idea guy.
So I'm the only one who can ever come up with a plan? That's a lot of pressure.
And also the complaining guy.
That part I don't mind.
However, while he might be seen as smart, I don't think his friends really see him as wise per se, especially in the beginning due to his clear lack of experience in the world. Plus, he can be pretty cocky at times, and he is not above belittling people and kicking them when they're down. So while I think he does try to be useful, I don't think the Sage is a good way to classify Sokka, especially when you're comparing Sokka to other characters such as Aang or even Uncle Iroh, who have a lot of wisdom in the series. Moving on, it's time for the Innocent archetype. And again, I don't really think this is a fitting archetype for Sokka. He's not really an optimist, nor does he see the good in people. He's pretty quick to pass judgment, and doesn't give many people the benefit of the doubt. And instead of being morally driven, Sokka's really more functionally driven.
No, we can't waste our time here. We have a bigger mission that we need to stay focused on. These people are on their own.
Plus, growing up in wartime, he's experienced a lot, making him not very naive. I also think he grew up as the series went on, which is something that Innocent doesn't normally do. While yes, he did remain the funny side character, we see a lot more depth and emotion from Sokka later in the series. He's loved and lost so much throughout the series that I don't really see him as the Innocent. Nearing the end of the list with the Creator archetype. Now, as the series goes on, I kinda think Sokka's interests get the better of him. He loves to develop new ideas and concepts, and loves it when people use what he makes. As he grows up, I can totally see him turning into someone like the Mechanist, someone who loves to create and push the limits of what can be done, especially without care for tradition. Plus, he's not a conformist, and is pretty self-absorbed. While he doesn't really start out as being an eccentric inventor, he does develop the skills and knowledge to make things really amazing. And he definitely has the fear of not being enough, or not being a leader like his dad. Plus, his ideas don't just make him look good, they provide a major use for the group. Plus, keep in mind, it was Sokka that discovered the secret about the Fire Nation's darkest day. Thus, his creative usefulness makes this archetype a pretty good fit for him indeed. And finally we have the Explorer archetype. Now, I think we all know that Sokka's not afraid of trying new things. Curiosity often gets the better of him. We often see him on the fence of being an intellectual and being a fighter, which tells us that he isn't really set in stone about who he is. Though this isn't a surprise as he comes from the Water Tribe, a society that is all about adapting to the environment. He's still a blank canvas waiting to put his identity on the world. And while I don't think he ever really chooses a side, this supports the notion that he is an explorer. However, he isn't really open-minded when it comes to anything spiritual. He's a bit of a non-believer and only acknowledges what he can physically see and touch. But he is ready for adventure at a moment's notice, so I definitely wouldn't discount the Explorer archetype quite yet. Overall though, based entirely on my more or less completely unqualified opinion, I believe that the best fit archetype for Sokka is the Magician. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm fairly confident in this decision. For starters, while Sokka does grow a lot in the year that ATLA takes place, I think this is the only beginning of a much bigger transformation. Though he's proud of himself, he is also certainly still humble enough to admit that he still has a lot to learn. And not only does he master many different fighting techniques, he also caught the eye of many different girls from all over the world. He's very well-rounded, and still developing both physically and mentally. So that's why I believe that the Magician is Sokka's most fitting archetype. And if you disagree, leave a comment down below and explain why. And also let me know what other TV shows and characters you'd like to see me analyze. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you all for watching, and remember, stay concentrated.